Hello and welcome back to the Two Button Crew podcast. I am your host, Glenn, and I am joined once again by honorary crew member Nathan Blake of Nathan Blake Games.
Howdy-ho, everyone. How are you doing today?
And today we're here to talk about Splatoon 3, Nintendo's, I don't know, is it their most recent multiplayer online game? It's been a little while since it's come out.
Yeah, I think it still probably is, at the very least. Well, really, when you think about it, other than like Smash, it's probably their only real franchise that is specifically for multiplayer, like online multiplayer.
All right, well, as is tradition here on the Two Button Crew podcast, the first time we discuss a game in a series, in this case, the first time we were discussing Splatoon, we talk about our history with the franchise. So, Nathaniel, what is your history with Splatoon?
It's fairly small, honestly. Whenever Splatoon 1 came out, I didn't have access to it in any way. I believe that was a Wii U game, was it?
Correct.
So, yeah, I didn't have the Wii U until well after the lifespan of Splatoon 1 had come and gone. And in that time period when I did play online multiplayer shooters, it was mostly Halo with my group of friends at the time. So when Splatoon 2 came out, I didn't get a real chance to mess with it until very, very late into its lifetime. But I did find a copy for like $30 on clearance at Walmart and just messed around just a tiny bit with it. Not much, but got to have a little bit of fun with it. And so I was, pretty pumped to get into Splatoon 3 as Splatoon 3 actually launched so that I could actually experience it as I was supposed to.
Yeah, so my history with Splatoon is a little bit more expansive. So I played the first Splatoon and I got pretty into it. And I remember seeing the Nintendo Direct, gosh, it was like 2015 or was it? Maybe it was 2014 when it was first announced. And thinking, oh, wow, this is actually a really interesting, cool idea. And we were so starved for content on the Wii U at that point that, any new, like a new franchise, any new game, much less a new franchise, was exciting. But I played the first one. I put a lot of time into it. I think I got to like B- in ranked mode and around level 20 or something. Then Splatoon 2 came out for the Switch, and I was in a point in my life where I just didn't have a ton of time on my hands. So I bought it, and then like several months later, I played through the story mode, did some multiplayer, basically walked away from it for periods of like 6 months at a time, and played the Octo expansion, walked away from it again. And I played the Octo expansion like years after it came out. And it wasn't until Splatoon, like I think the bulk of my multiplayer time in Splatoon 2 was in preparation for Splatoon 3.
Oh, goodness.
So I've been a Splatoon fan since the beginning, but unfortunately, like for Splatoon 2, I largely missed that. I think I maybe participated in one Splatfest. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm glad to finally be able to get back into the series, properly get back into it and kind of see the game as it's being updated and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let's talk about Splatoon. Let's talk about what the gameplay and what makes it unique compared to other multiplayer shooters. So Splatoon is unique compared, if you've never played, it's unique compared to other multiplayer shooters in that it's largely about controlling territory. The basic mode is called Turf Wars, and so you fire, and it's kind of the perfect shooter for Nintendo because it's kind of like paintball. It's not actual guts and guns and stuff. It's shooting ink, and then you the team that has more ink on their side of the map by the end of the match wins.
Yeah, you can absolutely see how this could have been just like a mini game in Mario Party or something. It's very much got that feel of like covering. There's multiple mini games in Mario Party that have that sort of like cover the most turf. Maybe you can stun your opponents or something, but really it's about covering the ground and stuff like that. And they just took that idea and they just completely expanded it into an entire game, which is actually really cool.
Yeah, and so the cool thing is the characters they're both humanoid, they're both kids, but they're also squids, and they can transform between the two. So not only is it your goal to cover most of the map, it's also covering the map also helps you move around because you can move faster when you're swimming through the ink as a squid, and and you move slower through enemies' ink. So it's this really interesting game of like that. It's not just charging in and trying to get as much territory. You also have to really consider, okay, am I overextending? Is my ability to escape going to be cut off? Because, when I get stuck in the opponent's ink, that's usually when I get killed or splatted, excuse me.
Yeah, there's definitely the way movement works in the game really does make it completely different from any other first-person or third-person multiplayer shooter, because like instead of like a lot of games, there is like a loadout and stuff like that, but instead of in a lot of games where you like have somebody who's like a designated tank or a designated healer or whatever, you're kind of able to do a lot of the same things, but it's all based around the whole like spreading ink, moving through the ink sort of thing, because there's like definite utility in being like really good at taking ground or really good at splatting opponents or really good at moving and like getting around places and stuff. And it's just really truly unique comparatively because of how movement works to pretty much every other shooter, because pretty much every other one is like, at best, you can sprint or use some sort of like glider or something. Whereas in this, it's like, you're like creating pathways in the ground and then swimming through them. And then like, you can even like put ink on the side of a wall and go up the wall, which is something that is just completely weird.
Yeah, it's, yeah, and this game actually adds some new options. Like you can do a squid roll if you go in one direction, then flick the stick in another direction and jump. As a squid, you'll do like it's kind of like a barrel roll in Star Fox. It like wards off some damage when you do it, and I never use it.
Yeah, I don't think I even knew that was a thing that you could do. They may have, in one of the later levels of the campaign, gone over that, and I might have missed it.
I don't believe they do. It's one of those things that if you watch the trailers and the presentations, you'd know about it. But and like maybe have Judd tell you if you talk to Judd in the lobby. But yeah, it doesn't really get a whole lot of attention. I don't see people doing it online.
So it's not part of the meta.
I think it is like the high level meta, but yeah, no, it's not something that the average player does.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, the focus on movement is really, really interesting in this game.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me, in the mid 2010s, there was a handful of games that started coming out that were like very parkour based.
What was that one about the robots? Titanfall had a parkour system?
Exactly, yeah. So eventually we got to Titanfall, which was a online multiplayer first-person shooter with parkour. And there's kind of a little bit of that DNA in it because, like, there is, like, the ability to do things that are, like, almost like wall runs and stuff, but it's just completely unique comparatively even to that because it's just really different. And then, of course, the way that the different guns in the game allow you to like completely alter how you're able to take territory and how easy it is for you to go up walls and stuff, like completely changes everything.
Yeah, and that's to say nothing of like the fact that there's also the super jump that you can use to teleport to effectively it's teleport, jump to allies or back to your base.
Yeah, kind of like almost like a fast travel, but it's like in the middle of combat.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of those things where I don't use it very much because it's actually hugely risky. because you have this little, everyone can see that someone's going to jump there, so if you're doing it to the front lines, you're going to get sniped.
Yeah, which is something I did not realize when we were playing together at first for a long time, was that it, like, literally telegraphed exactly where I was going to land. I was like, I get that the guy I jumped to was in a fight, but I don't understand how they're just like, new person, kill him instantly. And now I know after we played for, like, a while, I became aware that it, like, literally paints a target on your back when you land.
Yeah, so I usually try to check the map and try to figure out, okay, is this guy in a fight, and is he close to where I want to be? So it's a very situational ability. Also, like, being able to turn into a squid has, like, kind of stealth implications, because if you're not moving too fast, if you just tilt the stick a little bit, the enemies can't see you swimming through the ink. So
yeah, it really does actually allow, like, a whole nother aspect of sneaking, essentially, which is really interesting because there's not really a good way in most online multiplayer games to allow for stealth. Really, I mean, occasionally a game will have some sort of, like, cloaking ability that's, like, kind of shimmery or something, so it's just hard to see you, and they use it as, like, a power-up or something. But by and large, like, games rely on, like, like die rolls and stuff to decide if you can be seen by enemies, or cones of vision and stuff like that. And so for this to actually just make it where, no, it is legit hard to see someone sometimes when they are in the ground in a blob of ink, just barely moving.
And of course, being a third-person shooter, shooting is a massive part of this. So the game has several weapons for players to choose from, and that cover a wide variety of play styles and the like. And some of them are, like, really, really specific and nuanced. Like, Splatoon started out really basic with its weapons. It started out with shooters, which are just kind of your automatic weapons. You hold down the trigger and it shoots out a different little globs of ink. You had chargers, which were kind of like your rifles, sniper rifles and the like, that you charge up and then you can do a lot of damage to one enemy when you hit them. And you had paint rollers, which were not really analogous to any real-world weapon, obviously, but you just cover a lot of area and you get close to enemies and then you can run them over.
Yeah, I mean, they were supposed to be, obviously, like, the melee weapon of the game back then.
Yeah, it's basically your melee build, and they've added more over time. They added splatling guns, which are kind of a cross between a shooter and a charger. You charge it up, and then it fires a rapid stream of ink. There's the splatbrellas, which are like a shotgun, but you can, with a shield attached to the front, so if you hold it open, you can absorb incoming fire. What else? I think the
dualies. The dualies.
Yes, the dualies. How could I forget the dualies, which are like shooters, but you also get a dodge roll. Like, they're one of those things where when I first saw them, I'm like, why is this its own thing? But they do have a different play style.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the way they actually shoot, like, twice as fast after you've rolled as well. So it, like, creates a weird, like, meta around them. Yeah, and then I'm trying to remember if I'm forgetting any. I think brushes in Splatoon 3 have been recategorized as their own weapon. The brushes originally were considered a type of splat roller, but I think they're now their own weapon. And they're kind of like splat rollers, but they, instead of like a single ink fling, you can rapidly swing them back and forth. Right, and then there's the splatanas, obviously.
Yeah, and then new in Splatoon 3 are splatanas and stringers. And stringers are bows that shoot arrows that explode, and splatanas are basically, my guess is what happened was, because rollers and brush, like, I remember when I first saw brushes, when those were first introduced into the game, I looked at it and said, oh, that's your katana. Like, instead of a katana, that you get a paintbrush that, like a calligraphy brush. There's been sort of some, I've heard some people kind of opine about how calligraphy and, like Iaido or Kenjutsu are similar to one another.
Right.
Some kind of philosophizing of that sort. But so I thought, okay, that's meant to be the stand-in for a katana. And my guess is that the fan base just said, not good enough. I want katana.
Right, yeah. Because, I mean, the brush definitely does have like a katana feel whenever you're going like full swing on it. You're just tapping and he's just, just going all ham with it. But it doesn't have like a precision attack to it exactly. And it feels like a katana should have like this like precise, like very careful attack that you can do with it or something. Whereas it kind of... It's the brush is between the roller and the splatana, which is funny because the splatana is created after the fact. But the brushes, you can also do the thing where you put them on the ground and run around, and it's just a very small trail instead of a big wide one. So the splatana does weirdly create a whole new very precise way of using the weapon as opposed to the brushes, which are just like, you just kind of get up in something's face and tap the button, and he just goes blah, 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 with it.
But yeah, and then on top of all that, you have tons of special weapons and secondary weapons. So you have all manner of grenades, and I can't even keep them all straight in my head. Like I'll be playing a match, and then someone will throw something at me, and it's like, what the heck is that? Right.
Yeah, there's just 1,000 different things, and the really cool part is because you can build your own loadout, and because everything
can you? Because the thing is, the secondaries and the specials are pre-assigned.
Well, yes, but the gear to like you dress your whole character up in all the different gear, and that allows you to have like buffs to certain types of things, like how quickly things recharge or how much damage you take from certain things and stuff. And so you can, using that plus the different weapons plus the secondaries, does allow you to create like your own sort of loadout, which is really truly interesting because combat and ground taking is the same because it's both done with the ink. Every character is this weird support / combat sort of crossover, but then you can kind of try to use your gear and stuff to build yourself a little more towards the support side or a little more towards the combat side. And it is really cool because if you enjoy, for instance, being the healer every time you play a game, then you're never really a healer in this game per se, but you can do the support stuff all the time, and then you're still just as useful to your team and still even able to get kills here and there and stuff.
Yeah, I would say the closest thing to a healer is someone who has there's the specials. The interesting thing about the specials is that they they can really do a wide variety of things. So some of them are just like big gun that you use to target, particular enemies that are, maybe high priority. But some of them are, some of them ink a lot of ground. Some of them are good at splatting individuals. Some of them bolster your maneuverability. And some of them are like support roles. So, there's the one that I forget what it's called, but it's this little ball that bounces up and down and causes a shockwave. Doesn't ink any area. It just basically is annoying to people who are trying. You just throw it into like a bottleneck, and you have a lot more. People have to be a lot more cautious about that because they have to be mindful of those waves and jumping over them. Or the healer analogy. What's analogous to being a healer is that it's really more buffing your team. There's the tacticaler, I think, is what it's called. It's and you can just hand out drinks to your friends.
Yeah.
If they run by it, and that gives them a speed boost, an attack boost, and a defense boost. So yeah, you definitely, depending on what kit you have, you can definitely fill different roles in this game. So which of the weapons are your favorite? Which type?
I really like the dual ones. I like the splatanas still a whole lot. I got to where I like a lot of the charging ones quite a bit. While I played campaign, I don't know if I would be good at them in multiplayer, but I definitely did get to where I enjoyed like holding a charge and then swimming through the ink and then popping up and shooting something. You know, like there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do with some of that.
Yeah, my favorite is definitely the Splatling guns. Because I like the shooters, but the thing is, I'm not very good under high pressure situations where that demand fast reflexes. As you can probably tell by my tendency to pause and have to think about my word choice, I'm not someone that's very good at jumping headfirst into situations. So while I've somehow managed to get to be decent with shooters, I'm a lot better with Splatling guns because their role is more to you occupy like a high area and you survey the battlefield and then you provide suppressing fire. And so it's kind of like being a charger without the need for precision because that also would require me to be really, really precise quickly. So it's the sloppy man's charger.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that was one of the things that I did get to where I really enjoyed. Probably some of the most fun I had in the entire campaign was a mission where there was lots of bad guys just like right around corners and stuff, and one of the weapons it let you use was the dual pistols. And this time I was just like, I'm going to get through this level as fast as I can, not like try to kill everything, not try to open every box, you know, those sorts of things that I've been doing before. I was just going to get point A to point B as quick as I could, and it just felt really good to just like do those dodge rolls around corners and just like nail guys and then keep going. Like it was really dope. I really liked it.
Yeah, despite what I said, I actually do like the dualies and I do like the shooters. The dualies are a lot of fun, and having the dodge roll does make it easier to get in those head-to-head conflicts. And if nothing else, you just feel cool doing it until you eventually, like, because it costs a lot of ink, you run out of ink and then you realize that you're stuck in the opponent's ink and you done screwed up.
Yep.
So that's the basics of the gameplay. And before we go into the individual modes, I want to talk about the presentation because so much of Splatoon is its personality. Like it has a very strong kind of sense of identity that it established like right from the beginning of that Nintendo, like when it was first revealed in that E3 Nintendo Direct. And so, first of all is the character designs. You have the Inklings themselves, these kind of kid squid things, and then you have a bunch of other sea creatures. And it's actually really interesting because this is a world that has like kind of a multiplicity of different creatures inhabiting it. It's kind of like SpongeBob SquarePants in a way.
Yeah, no, it definitely has a incredibly unique aesthetic to it. As with most of Nintendo's most successful IPs, it started with what I can only imagine was some sort of fever dream while somebody was on a lot of NyQuil. Because, you know, you've got Plumber eats mushrooms and stomps on turtles. You've got, what was the other one that I was thinking? Oh yeah, you've got 10-year-old children that catch animals and have them do dog fights. You've got Space Fox that flies airships through archways because Miyamoto just thought that arches were fun. And then now you have squid children that transform and cover things in ink. And everything is just so incredibly colorful and just over the top. It's really, truly interesting. And all the characters, like you say, like they all have just a ton of personality just within their appearance, their hairstyle, and their clothing, and the way they react and stuff. Like everyone looks pretty similar in a way, like with the general shape of their face and stuff like that, yet everyone is super unique because of how they kind of hold themselves and their general clothing style and stuff. It's really cool.
One of the things that I do find interesting about Splatoon is that ostensibly all the player characters are children, and it's something I've thought about is like, other than Captain Cuttlefish, we don't actually know what Inkling adults, and there's some question as to whether Captain Cuttlefish is an Inkling himself, but fan speculation aside, we don't actually know what Inkling adults look like in this world. We never see them. The thing is, because this is a Japanese game and Japanese media has this trope of making like elders shrink down to the side, like you shrink as you get older. I don't actually know how big, like what would an Inkling adult look like? I'm not sure Captain Cuttlefish is indicative of that.
Yeah, I almost wonder if they're all like the exact same size and they just like the name of their, bipedal form is called a kid, even if they are in fact old enough that they wouldn't be a kid. I don't know, because I was noticing that like it refers to it as kid form in multiple spots, and it's like, but these characters are clearly not children in many other ways, and some of them are old men with beards, like you say. So like, what?
I'm now just imagining,
is that just what they are?
With smoking a cigarette with a 5 o'clock shadow.
Yeah, or whenever you do try to think of the adult, if it doesn't look like that, it's like twice the size and just like rippling biceps.
I know some people are going to get on me because I think there are some pictures of adults in the Sunken Sea scrolls, but it's one of those things where that actually oscillates between art styles, so it's not really clear how literal that's supposed to be to the world of Splatoon.
Yeah, certainly, because there's even like a dried squid in there that just looks like a real squid, like just a straight up regular squid. And obviously we even see a dried up squid at some point during the game, and it does not look like a straight up real squid. So it's like, okay. I mean, it looks more like a real one, obviously, but like not, that one was like photorealistic.
So another thing I want to, before we move on to something other than characters, something I want to point out is like the character design for the Inklings. It kind of has like this. It's interesting. They have sort of this sort of soft shape language and rendering that you would expect from kind of like a Pixar character. Like it looks kind of Western in a lot of ways. And I've noticed that ever since Splatoon was successful, like a lot of Nintendo's new franchises feature a similar art style. Like ARMS had an art style that was kind of like that. And then the new Wii Sports for Switch, I forget what the subtitle is. No, it's Switch Sports. Wii Sports for Switch. Oh gosh, that was a Freudian slip.
Nintendo Switch Sports or something like that, right? Yeah, but there's definitely been this kind of slightly more move towards these like very colorful round characters. Although you've seen it in Pokemon for a while as well, and I don't remember if that seemed to have started around the time of Splatoon 1 or not, but I do remember, especially from Diamond and Pearl onward, like even the Pokemon themselves became a lot more round and a lot less pointy.
Yeah, so that's just an interesting thing I've noticed. Is like Nintendo is just like, well, people liked the Inklings, so we're going to do this style. And while I love the art style of Splatoon and the design of the Inklings and all of that, I'm not sure how I feel about Nintendo using it for or using a similar art style for games like ARMS or Switch Sports or anything like that, or any future projects. It seems a little bit too homogenous for Nintendo to just say, this is the art style we're using from here on out.
Yeah, I agree. I think that one of Nintendo's strong suits, honestly, is that all of their first-party stuff has a very unique look to it. You see something Mario and it's Mario. You see Zelda stuff, it's Zelda stuff, even though Zelda has gone through like 3 or 4 different like general art styles. And then like Splatoon was kind of the epitome of that, where it was just like, okay, here we go. Like, this is the most unique looking and feeling game that they've almost ever made, pretty much. And then now, the last little chunk of time, it seems like everything's kind of just kind of rolled into a one. It doesn't really seem like they're trying for unique appearance to things anymore. It seems like everything kind of has a similar homogeneous look to it. And like you say, it kind of feels like it's loosely inspired by the Splatoon stuff, but not near as inspired as the Splatoon stuff is, because the Splatoon stuff, each character is very unique and very cool and stuff, whereas a lot of the characters in ARMS, like, they very, very well might as well be interchangeable with each other. I know they did have unique designs, but they were just forgettable unique designs. And so I think that had something to do with the failure of ARMS, was that it never really made itself out to be anything that you should pay attention to or care about. It was just like, hey, here's a game. It's boxing on the Switch. There you go.
Yeah. So moving on from character design, there's the world itself, and the world of Splatoon, especially Splatoon 3, is kind of interesting because Splatoon 1 had a very colorful kind of like urban Tokyo vibe to it, and Splatoon 3 has a much grittier sort of a feel.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of grime and a lot of rust and stuff on things, and boy, there's this one level with some rails that I died a bajillion times on, and it was really weird whenever I would fall and I would see the reflection in the water, and I'd realize that it was just like New York City, just like underwater above me or something weird like that. I was just like, what? Wait, this is weird.
And that's the interesting thing, is that Splatoon, it does have a wide variety of environments, and so you have some like very clean looking suburban environments. You have a lot of grungy kind of industrial things, especially for the levels introduced in Splatoon 3. Salmon Run, oh my gosh, Salmon Run is just, its own thing entirely. And then like the story mode, like so much of the vibe of story mode is because of the environment, like you said, and it's this very, like, you can make, they're good at making environments that are very unsettling to just explore, even when you're not really in any danger.
Yeah, certainly there's just like shut down buildings and like things that are taped off all over the place and stuff, and it kind of tells a story in and of itself, and you're kind of like, ooh, what is that building? Like, I wish I could get up on top of that and see what it is and stuff, but you don't really get a chance to interact with it. And so, like, they did put a lot of detail into all of the little areas and stuff. And, of course, you get into the levels, and, they're a little more classic Nintendo sort of levels a lot of times. They feel a lot like Mario 64 levels, or some of the shrines in Breath of the Wild or something in a lot of ways. Syndrome.
Yeah, and I will say that is probably my biggest
pretty
complaint
cool
about the world design, is that many of the levels just feel like abstract obstacle courses. And that's been true for all of the Splatoon games.
And for Nintendo in general, it happens a lot, honestly, because, they succeeded way back in the day with Mario, which was abstract obstacle courses, and they have not really decided to change that up since. And to be fair, they set the standard, and, for a long time, everyone thought that's just what video games were. So, it was obviously a success, and it hasn't stopped working for them, really.
Yeah. So, lastly is the fashion of Splatoon 3. And I have to say, like, the fashion in Splatoon, it's kind of interesting because I feel like the vibe of Splatoon 1 was a lot more cohesive, and then they diversified the fashion, especially in, like, the promotional material. So it went from kind of this summertime sort of, they had coats and stuff in Splatoon 1, but I don't know, it's interesting. It doesn't seem... I guess the designs seem a lot busier, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I imagine it's probably a little less cohesive, but, obviously if you're on your third game and you're going to let people dress their characters up yourself, you're got to have, like, some diversity in costume and stuff like that, or people are just going to be like, oh, yeah, this is, like, identical to the first one, why do I care?
Yeah. It's interesting. Despite saying that, while there is a broader variety, it just feels like there's less options in this game, at least when it first launched, than there were in the other games. Yeah, that's something I've noticed, is that, like, because the thing I always gravitate toward is this sort of paramilitary look. And so, like, you can't get a gas mask in Splatoon. Splatoon 3. Like the first two Splatoon games, like that was one of the starting sets was a gas mask, sort of like what Psycho Mantis wears in Metal Gear Solid.
Oh, they just replaced it with the COVID mask.
Yeah, there are now a lot of face masks that just go over cloth masks, but yeah, I don't know. So it is one of those things where it's like you can kind of get close to what you're looking for, but there doesn't seem to be. I don't know, and maybe that's just because the game's new and they haven't added as much content, but yeah, it has for large part it has a pretty broad representation of many different fashion styles. A lot of it is kind of more urban. I think a lot of it is kind of Japanese. Like there's what is it, like the satin jacket looks very, very much like what you would find in stereotype of East Asian street clothing, I guess.
Yeah, there does seem to be a lot of what you, at least us as Americans, would perceive as like Tokyo urban outfitting, is kind of what I get a lot from a lot of it, from what I've seen in pictures and from, things like anime and stuff, which I'm sure are not the greatest like depiction of what stuff looks like in actual Tokyo. But, like you just get a little bit of that vibe of like, okay, yeah, this is like urban apparel in Japan. Like, is definitely the vibe you get from a lot of it.
They give you the option in the looks menu to change your Inkling's pants, but pants have never been like an equipment slot. What are your thoughts on that? Would you like to have pants as an equipment slot?
Yeah, I think that would be cool. The only downside, of course, is that, and I assume once you get deeper into the game and you've leveled up more and you've got more equipment and stuff, there's a little bit less of this, but any game that allows you to kind of customize your appearance, but at the same time links like stats and stuff to that appearance is kind of frustrating. Like I was wearing the space helmet for a long time that I didn't like at all. It didn't fit the rest of my outfit at all just because it was the best helmet that I had. And so it is kind of nice that no matter what I put on, my pants still, are the outfit that I wanted for my character from the beginning. But maybe that's just because I'm new to the game, and if I was playing a lot and I had a whole lot of equipment, I would have something that looked like whatever I wanted that did whatever I wanted to do.
There's good news for you because in Splatoon 3, because of the ability chunk system, you can actually overwrite any of your abilities. So if you don't like the main ability on it costs a lot of ability chunks, so you have to spend a lot of time playing the game, but yeah. If you farm ability chunks, you can restat your equipment to be whatever you want it to be.
Okay, in that case, yeah, I think that that pants should be a thing too, because I do think it would be cool to be able to shift your appearance even more and really customize it then, because then you can just customize your appearance to look however you want, and then you can stat them however you want.
The only issue I see is that you add even more complexity because now there's an extra gear slot.
Right, it might do something to balancing, I don't know.
Yeah, overall, the fashion, it does, while it seems a little bit less unified than it was in past Splatoon games, than it was in Splatoon 1, it has like that it still has a very colorful kind of urban, sort of I guess to some extent, kind of a hip-hop aesthetic. And, it really does kind of... Splatoon, like when it first came out, the first game, people said it had kind of this 90s vibe, especially with the focus on like this, because slime was like a really big deal in the 90s. I don't know why, but,
right.
It's sort of the slime aesthetic and kind of Nickelodeon. So the bright colors of the fashion really help kind of bring that out.
Yeah, I kind of had that, you could definitely feel somebody having baggy pants and a backwards baseball cap and a boombox on their shoulder and the slime everywhere, like it all really just felt that like late 80s, early 90s vibe with the hip-hop sort of stuff going into there. And then, of course, the music and everything like still fit that because it's got this really, really unique soundtrack that I wouldn't say is hip-hop necessarily, but you could definitely see someone breakdancing to it.
Yeah, and the music is, it's very eclectic in Splatoon, and one of the nice features here in Splatoon 3 is that they patched this in a few months after launch. Is now you can actually it's interesting, like the music in Splatoon, they actually have like bands and stuff, fictional bands So that you'll have these bands, and it's like, oh yeah, I know this. This is like other than like the Squid Sisters or Anarchy, whatever their name is. I don't really know any of the bands and names, but like, I don't know, Barracuda, Smash, or whatever. It's like, oh yeah, I like their music. So it's interesting because you can like listen. You know, that you have these different bands that have like their own distinct style.
Yeah, absolutely. I just set it up with a 5.1 surround system. And so between the subwoofer and the fact that it plays a lot of the music on the satellites and then has a lot of the speech and stuff coming through like the main center speaker, like the music is really, really cool to have, like, you know, like hearing it come from like one of the vents in the campaign stuff where like as you get closer to the music, you can hear it coming from the level, you know, like it is really, really a unique, interesting experience. I really would suggest that a person figure out how to do surround sound with Splatoon if they can, because it's been really cool.
Okay,
honestly.
Well, I'll have to look into that because I'm still using the speaker on my TV, and those are not great. They're not like. So here's the thing about I'll go on a little tangent about my television sound system, is that the speaker, like, certain tones will like resonate with the plastic of the television. And so you can like hear the TV itself, like the plastic shell on the back of the TV where the speakers are, like start to hum and vibrate with like in sync with the speaker. And you want to. So here's the funny part. You want to know what triggers it the worst? Princess Zelda's voice in Breath of the Wild.
Oh, that's so great. Every time
so,
she talks.
So, people talk about how much they think Princess Zelda, I know we're not talking about Splatoon at the moment, but people talk about how her voice acting wasn't the best. Well, I have an extra layer of annoyance with her voice because of that. It just causes this obnoxious, high-pitched buzzing.
Oh,
but
that's
anyway,
awesome.
But yeah, no, the music, and like I said, there's so many different styles. There's rock, and the rock is, and it's all got this kind of slightly otherworld quality to it. Like, it's like, this is music. Yeah, this is not human music. This is squid music.
Yeah, they really hit something truly unique. I do remember way back in, I don't know, 2014, 2015, whenever it was that the first one came out, the Game of the Year awards I was listening to, like, Splatoon took the music category, and it was no contest. Like they were like, everyone else was arguing for their choice for second place because everyone was just like, this is some of the best and truly most unique music in video games in a long time, and everyone knew it. And so, like, this was for the Giant Bomb, which is a bunch of guys from IGN or GameSpot. When GameSpot went under, a bunch of people from GameSpot went and started their own stuff, and people from IGN came over and started working with them and stuff. So, it was has a pretty decent pedigree. But anyway, they did a Game of the Year awards podcast where you get to hear the entire deliberation of them arguing as a group about what should get number one in all these different categories. And that, like, they get heated, they yell at each other, they have like legit arguments. Like, some of them have games that they're like willing to die on the hill for and stuff. But it was really impressive that year when they were just like, Splatoon takes number one for music, so who's going to take number two, like, just like immediately.
Yeah. And the thing is also the musical style is different for the single player and the multiplayer. Like, the multiplayer is a bit more conventional, while the single player is like that's where they get their really avant-garde, really weird stuff. But I will say that it's the single player music in Splatoon 3, while it's still weird, like, if you watch the memes on YouTube, there's a lot of memes about the single player music, especially what was it, like the Bing Bang?
Oh yeah, that one was super strange.
But the thing is, the music in Splatoon 3's single player is actually more conventional than the first game. Like, the first game, the music was almost unpleasant at times.
Yeah, like it's nearly grating because
Yeah,
of,
just
of
how
how
weird
weird
it
it
was.
was.
This one they toned it down. It's still weird, and I like that, but it's now at like the acceptable level of weird. Also, kind of some interesting like 80s synth sort of influences I've noticed.
Yeah, no, I could totally have jammed out to the like I will probably go now, especially after this conversation, because hadn't even thought about it until just now. But I will probably track down Splatoon 3 soundtrack on whatever music app I can find it on, and just chill out listening to Splatoon music while I drive now. I think that'd be pretty cool.
So now that we've talked about the aesthetic, let's talk about the game modes. And we're going to be talking about story mode first. And so this is your spoiler warning. If you don't want to be spoiled, then jump ahead. I don't know how long this is going to go on, so I can't tell you at what point. But, just check if you're watching this on or listening to this on YouTube, then just check the chapter markers in the description. But, so story mode. And I find the story mode really interesting here because so you show up and you talk to Captain Cuttlefish, like at the beginning of every story mode. And he recruits you, possibly against your will. So, you've been drafted. And
Right.
he gives you like this really high-tech gear and stuff. And you go through a linear progression of levels, and you have to beat a level to get the power eggs to dispel this goop. You have this little small fry. This salmonid small fry, and people have taken to calling him Little Buddy. That
makes sense.
You actually do get some customization over him, so I gave him kind of the slicked back hair. What did you just go with the default, or what did you do for him?
No, I gave him a mohawk. I really enjoy giving him his little mohawk. He's so dirty.
I
and
know.
adorable.
I love that guy. And going around the hub level, what does it call it? I guess the Splatlands town, and trying to figure out where he's hiding. Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.
But he can eat the area is covered in this fuzzy goop that if you touch it, you get covered in fur. It turns you into
is that mold?
Yeah, I guess it's mold. I hadn't considered it like that, but it's like fur mold. Anyway, mammal mold.
Yeah.
So he can eat this stuff, but he needs a certain number of power eggs to eat a glob, and so you need to get the power eggs from beating the levels. And you start out in kind of this canyon with all this gear, fighting, honestly, like disappointingly basic levels.
Yeah, they're very tutorial-y.
Yeah. And I have to admit, this is one of those things where when you first play it, it's kind of grating and dumb, but after I got through it, because spoilers, that's not the entire game. There is a point where after you fight the first boss, the structure changes completely.
Yeah, it did take me a while to actually start the campaign legitimately, because whenever I say start, I had started it, but I played a couple levels and I was like, ugh. And I played a little bit more and I was like, ugh. And this happened multiple times when I would try to get into it. And then, you get to that boss fight and it really picks up.
So here's the thing is, I said I disliked it at first. I actually like it more in hindsight because the whole thing is a prank.
Yeah.
Because if you played the first Splatoon, that was the structure of the first two Splatoon campaign modes. Was this kind of more linear level where you're just going through an era of, like, it wasn't completely linear. You had some leeway in how you tackled them, but it was this sort of, you just go through very basic levels, and then you fight a boss, and then you go on to the next world. It was kind of like the Super Mario 3D World or whatever method.
Right.
And people were saying, even in Splatoon 2, when Splatoon 2 came out, they were like, can't they do something more interesting with the campaign? Can't they do something? And then Octopath expansion came out, and everyone was like, "Oh, Octopath expansion! Like this is what the campaign for Splatoon 3 should be." And the Octopath expansion had its structure was a lot more like what the Alterna sections were like, where you had these levels that had like very specific challenges that were weird and unique. And then you'd have to like pay an entry fee and stuff like that. It was a little bit different because you had to like go through these different rail lines because the whole thing was on like a subway system. But So what I think the intention of this was, one, as a tutorial, but two, I think Nintendo like heard the feedback and how people really did not want to go back to the first two campaigns for 3. And so they did this as a fake out.
Yeah, like a legit fake out to be like, hey, here you go, here it is.
And then
I assume the DJ guy who's the first boss is a recurring boss from the previous games.
Yeah, he was the final boss of the previous 2 games.
Okay, yeah, that's the feel that I got from the conversations I had with him. And then that ends, you beat him, and then all of a sudden it breaks out into like a far more like open world sort of game. There's still obviously like sections and levels, but the like hubs are way more like traversable areas with like things to find and stuff to do and like cool things.
Yeah, that in that regard, the hub levels is more like the first game, but the actual way the levels are designed is more like. So it's really kind of taking the best of both worlds approach.
The individual levels themselves, yeah, they have a lot of like really cool and interesting designs behind them. Some of the ones that really stick out are ones that have you like run some sort of special maze or recreate like some sort of artwork or like weird, interesting challenges. They definitely have a feel that reminds me a lot of them of Super Mario Sunshine, whenever you would make it into one of those platforming sections where you would lose FLUDD. Like a lot of them have kind of a vibe like that. Or, just in general, Super Mario Sunshine, which you can tell has like a lot of DNA in this, including the third boss battle where you fight the Manta Ray, who is literally the exact same as the Manta Ray in Super Mario Sunshine.
Like an idiot, despite the fact that
I know.
hated that boss in Super Mario Sunshine.
I loved
in
it.
This
in
one,
this. It made
was
me
fine
so happy
because I got the reference, but in Super Mario Sunshine, to heck with that boss, I hated.
Yeah, no, like legitimately, it like Super Mario Sunshine is one of those games that like I appreciated a lot more in hindsight. But yeah, like there were some definitely grating parts, and that level was super weird and kind of grating and frustrating. Like I feel like they could have done more with it. But anyway, yeah, the fact that the Manta Ray does the exact same thing, and his ink looks way more like the ink from the ink from Super Mario Sunshine than a lot of the rest of the ink does in the game. It was really cool. I appreciated that a lot. But yeah, just a lot of the levels kind of had a similar feel to platforming in Mario games, which I think was really cool. And I don't have a lot to compare it to from the previous games, but it definitely worked well, and I definitely liked it, except for some of the rail ones where you're shooting targets.
Okay, so I'm not the only one who hated those, because my least favorite, and I think you actually referenced it earlier, my least favorite mission in the entire game, and the one that I had the most trouble with outside of the one that's like the super hard one that's supposed to be super hard. My least favorite one is the one where you're going through, it's like kind of has a sunset aesthetic, and I think the default weapon is the stringer, the 3-stringer. Yeah,
yes.
And you're supposed to break all the crates, and if you don't, you fall off. That one I think probably took me like over 45 minutes.
Yeah, so that one is the one that I have struggled with the most out of, like, I've pretty much breezed through everything else in the entire game, and that one was nearly impossible for me, and I finally just had to move on. I'll have to come back to it. But essentially it's the one that just kind of revealed some of the flaws of Splatoon 3, in that because it's a multiplayer game that they have, like, designed a campaign for, I just feel like a lot of times the hit detection and stuff like that is kind of weird whenever you're trying to hit something that is a stationary target. And maybe it's just get good scrub, but I continually felt like I would do the exact same thing on a subsequent try, and it just wouldn't work when I was trying to blow up some of those crates. Like, I would hit center mass with the arrows, and it would explode and just not knock one of them out randomly or something like that. And so there was just, like, frustrating moments like that happened a lot that just really Or like where you would aim at something and it would show that your reticle was where it needed to be because it'll change colors if you're going to be able to hit something, and you'd let it loose, and then it would nick something else on the way over and it would block it. Just because I just don't think their sight system is designed for you to be like moving super fast when you're shooting at things, because their sight system is designed for, jumping back and forth and shooting a guy who's right in front of you who's shaped like a person. And so your like hit detection is not necessarily that specific whenever you're doing that, because it's a person-shaped thing and not a square that's behind another square, and you accidentally nick the corner of the first square, but it doesn't show that you're going to hit the corner of the square. So there's just things like that happened a lot during that I became really frustrated with some of the inconsistencies. Everything else was really good the rest of the time, but that particular one.
And I will just to like sort of try to comfort you a little bit. I've seen a lot of animosity for that mission online from other players. So you're not alone. I had trouble with it. A lot of other people had trouble with it.
And also, it's the one other thing that I do have, like, everything in this podcast is pretty much going to be praised for this game, except for this moment. The other thing that I did notice is that one of the ways that they increase difficulty sometimes is by going, ha, gotcha. They do like to do that occasionally, and I felt that in this one and in one of the other Target ones. In general, you can beat one of these missions on your first try most of the time. But there are a couple of missions that I nearly guarantee no one can beat on the first try, because they intentionally do things that you just can't account for.
Are you talking about how one of them you have to beat it while in free fall?
Yeah. So at the end of this one, you have to beat while in free fall, and as you're coming up on the rail, you just don't have any idea what's happening. Like, it's just all of a sudden you're just launched off and you're trying to figure out how you're supposed to snipe it. And you're falling and you're like, okay, well, I just failed that attempt because I didn't even know what was happening. But then in another one where they straight up, like, kind of just, it's clear that they are kind of just poking at you and like, haha, look, you couldn't beat it because we messed with you, is one where they launch the targets at you in a previous one, and on the very last one, the fifth one, flies over and it hits the fence and bounces away from you, and they go, oh no, and it's like, oh, okay, well, there was no possible way that I could have known that, and so I failed the mission because it bounced away, when it's the only time one bounces any direction but towards you in the entire map. You've got to hit all 15. The 15th one hits on the same side that they're launching from and bounces away back towards where they came from. And you just have no time to react. And oops, you just lost. So now you have to replay again, because you couldn't have possibly known that was going to happen without playing and losing it once before, essentially. And so there's a couple of moments in the game like that where I was pretty frustrated, where the game essentially just decided, yeah, you're going to have to lose this and then try again. Whereas I feel like in any game, like that's an old game mechanic, where you're just supposed to bang your head against it until you learn everything, and then you can do it flawlessly.
It's kind of an old school mindset to game design.
Yes, exactly. Where in old platformers, for instance, you couldn't have known what was coming up sometimes until you had already died, and so you just have to learn the entire level through trial and error. And we've come away from that throughout the years a lot, and I appreciate that, because I like the idea that you can actually beat a game just based on skill without having to memorize everything, and there's a little tiny bit of that you have to memorize everything in Splatoon 3's campaign. And it just comes away, you feel kind of like you're doing a whole lot of those like time trial sort of missions in an open world game or something that are like very tertiary and not part of the main game. It's like, oh yeah, you gotta catch 100 pigeons while you're flying around the city as Spider-Man, and it's like, this is kind of frustrating, but at least it's like a really secondary mission that I don't have to care about at all. But instead they've made it like a main part. Yeah, you can skip it, but you feel bad doing it because it's not any different from any of the other missions as far as the way the game looks at it.
Well, actually, you can tell the difficulty
that's my rant.
Of a mission based on the color of the kettle. Yeah, the
I
gold
did not
ones
know
are
that.
apparently harder. So
Okay. All right.
I don't
Well,
know if there's like any difference in how much stuff you get from them, but yeah, there's that. So
yeah.
while we're on the
Yeah.
subject of the gameplay, what do you think about having the upgrade stuff for the skill tree, I guess, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, the hero gear tab. I thought that was pretty cool. I appreciated it. It was fun. I do feel like I might have been missing something where I could like choose what gun I wanted to equip or something. Like, I know you could choose between 3 guns in each mission, but I felt like I should be able to change the gun that was for my main loadout, but it was just the really like bog standard gun the entire time. Other than that, yeah, I thought it was cool that you slowly unlocked the different secondary weapons and like using less ink and stuff, and you definitely felt rewarded for like kind of generally 100%ing things, because I never like I got upgrades as soon as they were available, like every time, because I had been really trying really hard to find everything in the game and do all the stuff. And so I was never like behind on that, like, oh no, I can't get this upgrade because I didn't do enough. So it did feel rewarding to get to like do better because my character because I had been trying really hard.
I really like that. The original Splatoon had some upgrade mechanics from what I recall. It's been a while, but nothing quite that in depth. I also like the fact that this is just a nice detail that I like, is that it does eventually change your character's appearance.
Yeah, there's definitely some shifts in what your character looks like and stuff as you keep leveling up. I thought that was really an interesting touch.
My biggest complaint is that you don't get to keep the gear when you're using something other than the hero shot in a mission. And, it's not even because I miss the special abilities. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do. But I just want shoes. Is that so much to ask for? That was literally like the first thing I tried to get, was to get my character's shoes back, because I don't want to be walking around in I think they said the snow was artificial, but I don't want to be walking around in the artificial snow barefoot.
Yeah, I did just in general feel... It's maybe one of my other weird complaints is that I never could figure out, like, my outfit was constantly changing, and then I've got a different outfit in the hub world, and then there's, you've got a different outfit for like Salmon Run, and you got a different outfit for turf battles. It's your outfit is constantly changing based on what game mode you're playing, and even beyond that, like different weird things during those game modes. And so I am kind of jarred by that, because I do like to get my character the way I want them to look in a game and then stick with it. And for me to constantly be robbed of the things that I've unlocked and the appearance that I've gotten that I like for just some other weird random costume that's associated with the game mode I'm playing is, it's a little off-putting, but it's not too bad.
But yeah, so let's talk about the story. As I already alluded to, you're recruited / drafted by Captain Cuttlefish to try to solve the mammal goop issue. So in the plot, after you clear the valley, I don't know if it's Octo Valley, but you're clearing the goop out from it, and the floor collapses and you fall into Alterna, which was the last bastion of humanity after the whatever cataclysm destroyed humanity and put them on the back foot. So you get to explore this kind of, I don't know, I guess in a way it's kind of a tomb. Like they were trying to build a rocket to escape from space, and you can see the rocket off in the distance. But it's kind of this very unsettling setting, It's this kind of this post-apocalyptic setting where everyone is, and you're getting like as you go along, you're getting logs from humanity that is sort of detailing the events leading up to them trying to launch into space, and even at one point you can actually get logs of what happened after they went to space. Spoilers: it didn't go well.
Yeah, the whole area kind of has this like super like spooky kind of like research, like cobbled together field, like camp sort of vibe to it. Like you definitely get that it's like definitely a last stand sort of area where nothing's like really built up like a real buildings or anything. It's very much just like, oh yeah, we got some like portable research buildings over here, and you know, like definitely kind of a camp vibe in a lot of places. And then like you say, yeah, there's a rocket ship off in the distance and everything's kind of like broken, and yeah, it has this like ghost of a apocalypse feel to it the entire time, even though it's pretty colorful and kind of like,
I mean, I guess white is a color.
Yeah, you know, yeah. I mean, there's buildings that have lots of color, you know, and stuff like that. But yeah, there's a lot of ice and snow and white stuff too. Yeah, they definitely have a white aesthetic. But then it makes all the like red buildings and stuff, like the weird, like, you could definitely get the feel that they're like a research building or something that's like been just plopped down there. That's like bright red, that you can't actually go into, and I really wanted to at least get on top of it, but you can't.
And so after all of this, after exploring this area, you explore more and more of it, and you're exploring it with the Squid Sisters, because the Squid Sisters are also secret agents, harkening back to the late 90s and early 2000s in terms of writing, where you could be a pop star and a secret agent, apparently.
It's delightful, and the captain doesn't ever actually talk. Everyone else talks for the captain.
Yeah, that is pretty funny. By which we mean the protagonist from the previous. I think the captain is supposed to be the protagonist from the first Splatoon. We're not referring to Captain Cuttlefish, for those of you who haven't played it.
No, yeah.
And if you haven't played it, why are you listening to this? Didn't you hear a spoiler warning? But yeah, and then what are they called? I want to say Anarchy Rainbow, right?
No, they're the something Edge.
Oh, yeah. I think Anarchy Rainbow is the name of one of their songs. It's Deep Cut. Yeah,
Deep Cut shows up. Yeah, I was like, I know it has like a sword reference in there.
Yeah, and so you have Shiver, Fry, and Big Man show up at some point, and they're basically Team Rocket.
Yeah, it's delightful. I really appreciated them a whole lot. They were enjoyable. Shiver's probably my favorite, but obviously, like, the Big Man boss fight was fantastic too. Like, it was a good time. It's really kind of refreshing, because normally the pop star representative of the game is kind of your ally at the end, at least at the end of the story mode. They're revealed to be like secret agents or something, because in Splatoon 2 that Marina and Pearl were also kind of in on it, but and I think that was more so in the Octopass expansion. But yeah, no, like throughout the entire Octopass expansion, like they were your contacts and not Callie and Marie. And then here in this game, the idols, or whatever, the musician group, are actually, for most of the game, antagonists. And that was a really nice kind of twist on it. Yeah, it was really funny, because obviously I've seen them as the news people at the beginning of every day when you log on, telling you what maps are available and stuff like that. So then for them to show up as the villains briefly, and you just be like, wait, what's happening? Why? What? And they're like, yeah, we gotta have day jobs too. And it was very funny. It was enjoyable.
It's one of those things that you go up and you look at them in the studio, and you just sort of like press your face against a glass and glare at them after that. Well, until you beat the story mode. They join your team, but
yeah.
And then the big reveal for the story is that the villain is Mr. Grizz.
I love Mr. Grizz.
Oh yeah, Mr. Grizz is great. But Mr. Grizz, it's interesting because he was, he's the boss of Salmon Run. He's the employer, and so this is a character that was introduced in Splatoon 2. And so it's just interesting seeing that, like, kind of that long game, the foreshadowing since the previous game of this kind of shady guy who's collecting these things and you don't really know why he wants them.
And then in this one, he shows up, and you just get little tidbits of information about him at first. Like, you get that it's probably Mr. Grizz early on, because you start hearing, like, little, like, chatter on the radio and stuff. And he's obviously talking about business and stuff. But then his whole plan, and then whenever you actually get to see him, is really, really interesting. It is weird, because, like, essentially his idea is he's going to cover the whole world in this mold stuff and bring back the mammals. And you feel kind of weird as a human being who is a mammal, like, fighting against him. But at the same time, it's like, well, this is already the post-apocalypse, and there's already essentially the new version of humans are around. So it is weird to, like, go against the guy who's, I guess, essentially trying to bring back the normal order of things. But at the same time, you could only do it by, like, wiping out all of what is humanity now at this point. So, and then, of course, he's just delightful. Like, I loved seeing him, like, just gigantic and talking about business constantly. It was enjoyable.
Yeah, he has this very kind of formal sort of corporate PR way of speaking. Everything reads sort of like an internal memo.
Yeah, absolutely. There was this great line. He said, I can't remember what it is that he called it, but he called his plan, like, some sort of, like, apocalypse or something like that. And he was like, don't call it that in front of HR or something like that. That was one of my favorite lines in the game.
Yeah, and then in, like, true Sonic the Hedgehog tradition, that the whole thing ends in a battle in space.
Yeah, that was really, really cool. I appreciated a lot of things about that, like the rotating spaceship where you had to, like, run on the spaceship and follow it around and stuff. There was a little bit of that whole, like, trial and error thing there where, like, you don't know what's happening until you've already died, and then you have to, like, oh, okay, I guess I'm trying that again because I didn't know that was what they were wanting from me. But it was pretty good all the way up until that's the penultimate moment, is when you're running on this spaceship fighting him, and then the DJ guy from the previous game shows up, and you use his spaceship, and your small fry turns into a huge fry, and, like, just this very power of friendship nonsense happens at the end, which is pretty delightful. But I did not know how to control my spaceship for a while, and so I lost the first time because they do not explain it even a little bit.
Yeah, that was a problem, and I did screw up the first time. But hey, you get that special game over screen that I'm sure will traumatize a generation of children.
Yeah, that was kind of horrifying. Like, well done. It made me feel very despondent after I saw that, and I was like, wow, that's kind of messed up.
That's kind of
good
the
job, Nintendo.
entire vibe of Splatoon. It's this really bright, colorful shooter with this kind of cartoony 90s sort of very kid-friendly sort of aesthetic in the multiplayer, and then the single-player modes always have this weird kind of eerie sort of just very creepy vibe.
Yeah, the post-apocalyptic part is way more obvious in the story mode, which is really interesting. So yeah, it's
most prevalent, I would say, of all the main story modes here. I think probably the darkest story mode was the Octopath expansion, but of, like, the non-DLC ones, yeah, this is definitely the eeriest and weirdest one.
Yeah, so as just kind of a quick summary, because we kind of mentioned the random handful of the things from the story, but didn't really quite go over it. Yeah, you get down there. Mr. Grizz's plan is to launch this spaceship into space and then explode a whole bunch of his mammal mold onto the whole planet and sort of, like, I guess, kill everything and then start over evolution, I suppose, is his plan, so that he can bring back mammals through his mammal mold. And if you lose in that last minute, then yeah, he totally does it, and you actually see scenes of the whole world covered in this mold and people, like, laying there dead.
Well, the thing is, I don't think they actually die, best I can tell.
Yeah, get covered in the mold stuff, but that's what happens when you die in the game. If you touch the mold, you get covered in that mold stuff, and you fall over, and then you respawn.
That happens, they like sometimes if it. I remember that happened to me in the opening area with Captain Cuttlefish, and I remember him making a remark about having to shave me or something. So I'm not sure it's a death sentence. It's a little ambiguous.
I'm not sure. Yeah, but yeah, this cityscape covered in the mold stuff, and people laying on the ground covered in this mold fur stuff, not able to move. It's pretty horrific. So you stop him, and the credits roll, and you manage to stop him because everybody teams up together finally at the end, and for some reason their good vibes and music power up your small fry and turn him into a gigantic fish monster kaiju that fights Mr. Grizz, who is also a giant bear kaiju.
And so interesting thing is, after you beat story mode, like, you can still do Salmon Run, but so that may seem like a bit of a plot hole, but they actually accounted for that. Did you know about that?
Oh no, I did not.
Okay, so what's there? If you go into Grizzco, you'll notice that there's a little pencil holder cup that is black and white and kind of patterned to look like Judd. And so before you beat story mode, and I didn't notice this because I did not play multiplayer until I beat story mode. But before you beat story mode, little Judd, he looks weird and spiky, right? But he did not look that way in the first game, or in Splatoon 2, the first game he showed up in. After you beat story mode, he's now wearing a headset.
So what's
the implication is that he took over Grizzco after Mr. Grizz got launched into space.
Oh, okay.
So, and if you read some of the sunken scrolls regarding Little Judd, it's made very clear Little Judd is a spiteful, bitter, malicious little gremlin who's just angry at the world for existing. Best I can tell. So I think we know who the villain of Splatoon 4 or the announced, what is it called? The Side Order DLC that was recently announced. I think we know who the villain of that's going to be.
Yeah, that would make some sense.
So I'm looking forward to that because I've never trusted that guy. Judd is cool. I like Judd, but little Judd, ever since I first saw him, I'm like, where did this come from?
Something weird about his eyes.
Those beady little eyes, like a doll's eyes.
Yeah, overall the story was enjoyable and interesting, and I think that especially the like boss battle there, especially the part where you're actually on the spaceship before you go into the DJ mech, definitely felt like a good culmination. Like, you really feel like you used a lot of the skills that you learned in the campaign a lot during that, and it felt good. It's cool.
All right, so now that we've talked about story mode, let's talk about the versus modes in the game. So there are the turf wars and there are the ranked matches, and turf wars is kind of the main draw here. So for those of you who if you need a summary of turf war, basically you have 3 minutes to ink as much territory as possible. And that's pretty much it. It's very simple to explain. And honestly, I know a lot of people, especially like the people who are like really hardcore Splatoon fans, don't like Turf War that much. They see it as kind of a silly mode that you just blow off. It's like, yeah, this is where you go to practice with weapons. But I really like Turf Wars because it's a simple concept. You can just jump in and start playing, but there actually is, like, I've watched a few videos on it. There actually is strategy to it. There are tactics you can apply.
Yeah, I think that it's a really pretty enjoyable mode. It may be one of my favorite things to do. I think Salmon Run I might enjoy a little bit more, but I've just always been a bigger fan of co-op modes than I am of like competitive modes, so that makes sense. But that said, like, Turf Wars is just good, clean fun. It's good to jump into.
It's pretty messy. I'm not sure I would say it's clean.
Yeah, but yeah, you and I, even on the days that I only ended up being able to play like a couple of matches because we had like weird internet problems or what have you. We still felt like we got to like get in, get out, have fun, even though we didn't get to devote as much time to it. So, after now that we're finishing up with our review of this game, I don't see any reason why we won't keep like trying to get together every week or two and play at least a couple rounds of Turf Wars here or there.
And so what do you think about? A lot of people have said only the last 30 seconds of Turf Wars matters because like with the ranked modes, you actually score points and so you can get a lead. What do you think of that complaint? Do you think that Turf Wars is it's kind of inconsequential how you go about it, or?
I think that there's a little bit of that, but honestly, like, obviously, if you start getting momentum and you keep the pressure on, then that matters in the end game a lot. And, I haven't got to play it as much as I would like to, especially to, like, speak authoritatively about it or whatever, but I do feel like if you know what you're doing and you keep the pressure on and you don't like, a lot of teams seem to forget to keep their own side inked and stuff like that, as long as you don't fail to do those sorts of things, then early leads in it can start paying dividends later in the round. But at the same time, there is always a chance that you can come back, which it sucks whenever you're the winning team, when you're winning and then that happens to you. But obviously it feels great whenever you feel like you're losing and then you come back. So
here's a story of when that happened to me. I was playing a match and I was trying to get in the enemy's base, and it was the very end of the match. And so I think I was using a Splatling so I could clear the corridor, and then they locked onto me with their tentamissiles. I thought, okay, I have two ways I can go. I can run back to safety, or I can charge forward on that narrow path I made, even though I'm rushing towards like 2 or 3 enemies. But it's the end of the match. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to run for it. I'm going to throw a bomb. And so I did that, which is probably what no one expected me to do. I threw that bomb. It went off. The match ends. I won by 0.1%. I remember literally my response to that was, oh my gosh, they must be cussing up a storm right now.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. Yeah. And that's the thing is that, I think complaints about that, honestly, are just the complaints of sore losers in a way, because there's no way people complain that only the last minute matters when they just won. They're only complaining about that whenever they feel like they were winning for a lot of it, and then they let it slip.
It's one of those things where it's you have like, how many innings are there in baseball? Why not just... But
right, exactly.
And the thing I've seen is that if you get like your side, if you can push your opponent back to their spawn point early on, even if they regain ground, they're probably not going to completely clear off their side because they're so desperate to try to do a counter push. So the thing I've seen is that, you actually do, if they gain ground very early on, you actually oftentimes are at a disadvantage just because they've made inroads into your side, and your team's probably not, like, you in theory can, but you need all your manpower to push them back usually, which means that there's now going to be chunks of your side, even if it's small ones, that are like undermining your national sovereignty or whatever.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think, honestly, it definitely works well. And I think that, especially for a more laid-back game mode where you can just drop in and just play and not have to worry about the overall consequences, it does feel good to have it be where you always feel like you can come back, but that overall everything you do does matter.
And one thing I will say about Splatoon 3 is that I think the maps have changed a bit because they don't feel as expansive as they used to be. Because one of the things I've noticed about Splatoon 3, in Splatoon 1 and 2, I could just kind of like wander off and do my own thing and just sort of avoid other players. and feel like I was contributing. In Splatoon 3, you will be brought into conflict with other people, and I think they've like narrowed the maps to make it to like funnel you into conflicts more often.
There does seem to be a lot of like bottlenecks and high ground areas where it's like, okay, yeah, if you don't get supremacy here, then you're gonna struggle for the rest of the match.
Yeah, so Splatoon 3, I will say the turf wars do feel a lot more adversarial. They are a lot more aggressive than in previous games, which, I mean, on one hand, that's forced me to get better at the actual shooting part. There's a part of me that gets a little bit frustrated at that because, like I've said, I'm not the best at head-to-head combat. But I think probably that's more in line with what Nintendo wanted as a design, and it's a different play style. That's the thing I'll say, is that like the Splatoon 3 has a different feel than Splatoon 2 in terms of how the turf wars, like, they kind of ebb and flow, which I would not say was the case with Splatoon 1. Yeah.
Interesting.
But yeah, so other than that, there's ranked mode, which you have to be level 10 to even enter ranked matches. Have you reached level 10?
I think I have just recently, so I think I technically am ranked C-, but I don't think I've really actually messed with them.
Okay, so ranked modes are fun. So the thing is, every Splatoon game does the actual ranking differently. So Splatoon 1, there was one rank for all ranked mode. So you could get to like A rank just by playing tower mode. Splatoon 2 separated them into different categories. So you had your tower rank, you had your Splat Zones rank, you had your Clam Blitz rank. And now it's back to them all being rolled into one, but it resets at the end of every season.
Okay.
Which is weird. And I'll confess, the whole resetting thing is part of the reason why I don't really bother with ranked mode that much.
Right. It's kind of just like bragging rights is essentially what you're after if you're going to go after a ranked
It is great
mode.
for a change of pace. I will do it on occasion. I'm just like, I'm not super into it, especially since it's like, well, that rank's not going to, like, it's just going to get reset at the end of the season, so why even bother? But I guess to speak briefly on my opinions of each of the modes, let's see, probably my favorite is Splat Zones because it just reminds me the most of Turf War. And weirdly enough, that one seems to be the least common in rotation from what I've seen, but that may just be like confirmation bias on my part. Tower Defense and Rainmaker are kind of conceptually similar, except Rainmaker's a bit more freeform because you can pick up the Rainmaker and actually shoot with it and go in any direction you want. Those are fine. Clam Blitz, I've heard some people really like Clam Blitz. I just cannot wrap my head around it. Like, that's the you got shot in the back of the head mode for me. And I cannot figure out, like, what is the appropriate strategy do I have to adopt to not have that happen to me? So yeah, ranked mode, they're, like, don't get me wrong, they're all fun modes, but they do have I feel like I'm forgetting one. Am I?
I don't know enough about the ranked ones to have much opinion or to know what the ranked modes are.
Whatever the case is, I like them. They are good game modes, but the thing is, it always, like, I always walk out of them, like, feeling kind of exhausted because like, it feels much more like a tug of war. And, like, when you're losing, it feels like in Turf War, when you're losing, it feels bad, but it doesn't last very long, and you just sort of, kind of shrug it off. Here, it's like you're losing, but you can, like, extend the match by doing better or by, like, trying to hold them off. So it's one of those really, like, when you're losing, it really drags on. Unless you're just getting absolutely stomped, and then you just got absolutely stomped.
Right. Yeah, I've never really liked ranked gameplay very much in any online shooter because I don't like the feeling of the pressure that you feel to, like, you know, you got a whole team, and so if you're not doing very well that game, you're going to affect everybody else on your team's rank and stuff. And so that pressure just never has felt good. So,
so yeah, those are the versus modes. They're kind of the main draw. Next is Salmon Run, the cooperative mode, the PvE.
Yeah, it's a whole lot of fun. I really appreciate it. It has a lot of tactics involved in it. You know, you definitely feel like you can drop in with a friend or two and play it, and whether you win or lose, you made some progress on your job and got points and stuff like that. And then whenever you get a chance to fight one of the like big cool bosses, it's always fun. What's the name of the giant
Kohozuna.
one?
Kohozuna,
yeah.
Kohozuna.
I knew it. I knew I could get you. I actually thought that's what Small Fry would turn into whenever he turned into Huge Fry.
That's not what happened.
But anyway, I guess because he wouldn't have been able to fly in space as Kohozuna. But yeah, it was it's a cool mode because there's so many different bosses and the waves and everything. That's always my favorite type of game mode in any game is waves with cool different bosses and feeling like you can, you know, work in like a real kind of SWAT team style with your team and communicate well and you know, like take ground and stuff.
Yeah.
It's always really
I
fun.
will say that
love
this mode is like, it does not pull its punches. It definitely gets very hectic, especially on the higher levels. Like, I somehow at one point got up to like professional +2. And it's one of those things where like every time I reach that, like after I got like past part-time professional, I think is what it's called, I was just like, how did this happen? I don't feel like I have the mental bandwidth to do this, and yet I am. It's kind of like I have this category of games that I call Zen games, where and I don't think Salmon Run is quite a Zen game, but it's definitely approaching it where you're like, the way you get good at the game is you just sort of turn your brain off and like tap into some altered state of consciousness.
Yeah, you gotta get into your flow state. You get into your flow state, and then you just and that actually happens more often whenever you have an information overload. So your brain just sort of switches off a little bit, and then it's pure reaction, and it works out really well most of the time until you're tired. And
the
then
games for me that I think of most when I think of those type of games are F-Zero and Monster Hunter.
Oh
yeah, and Splatoon. If you like F-Zero and Monster Hunter, not necessarily like the Salmon Run is not necessarily like those in terms of gameplay, but in terms of the like having to dial down your parts of your brain and just sort of kind of react thing, it definitely it gets close to tapping into that. There is like
yeah, I can see that,
a tendency to try to like look at things and go, okay, I need to get those or whatever, but then again, like that's still part of Monster Hunter. It's like, oh, I need to go sharpen my weapon right now. To be back in a sec.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's definitely got there's strategy to it, and there's definitely things that you can, but there's so much going on at the same time, and it's about really just relying on your instincts so often because each different type of bad guy has, you know, kind of their own way that you have to fight them and stuff, and so especially if you're less knowledgeable about the game, then you're like a little more of a disadvantage because you don't have those instincts of like, oh yeah, I need to hit this guy this way because he's got this special thing, you know. You're just like, I don't know. But yeah, as I played it more and we did it more over a couple of sessions, like I got to where I like instinctively knew more how to fight each bad guy and how to exploit their weaknesses and how to use them against other bad guys, because that's kind of cool that you can do that too and stuff. It's cool. We honestly got where we were doing pretty good, especially as a team, on a couple of those sessions. So I'm excited for more Salmon Run.
Yeah, and I definitely want to do more Salmon Run. My goal at the moment, and this is like my major issue with Salmon Run, is getting some of the rewards just takes forever. Because you have to charge up your gauge to fight Kohozuna, and then Kohozuna is going to just give you a bunch of bronze scales. And you have to collect scales to get the nicer rewards. And silver scales like have a... on the upper levels, I think you can get it to be about as high as like a 10% chance per scale. Like it's calculated individually per each scale, interestingly. So it takes a long while to get anything. I finally got my green slop suit, but I'm aiming for the blue one.
So that's the more super rare one.
Yeah, the rarest ones are the black one and the white one. So that's what the real tryhards have. I don't particularly care for those colors, so I just want to get the blue one because I think it looks pretty.
That makes sense.
But I finally got the green one, and that's kind of the thing is I look at a team, and when I see like my entire team is something other than the orange ones, it's sort of like, okay, I know I'm working with some vets at least.
Right.
But it's a great mode. It's great to cooperate with a bunch of people. It, like I said, is really overwhelming at first, and you do get promoted very quickly, so it's very easy to end up getting getting to much higher rank than what you're prepared for.
Yeah, I remember we were playing, and it's pretty okay for the first little bit, but after we had done like probably 3 rounds, like one round was just insane, and you legitimately pointed out, you're like, I was kind of hoping that since you are just starting out, that the game would like keep it a little simpler for a little while longer, but nope, that was rough.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't help. One of the things I learned at lower levels, I don't know how I ever got through the low levels, because at the lower levels, the people playing are just terrible. So you can't count on your teammates for diddly squat.
Yeah, it's like I was still figuring out how the game even worked, and then our other 2 team members were generally useless. Like, I kid you not, there were some times that there was just somebody standing in a corner shooting at the floor, and there were probably like 7, and it's fine, but that doesn't change the fact that we were essentially down a player.
Yeah, but it's a great mode, and like calling out to when you get that flow state and you're calling out to your friends and saying, oh, there's a guy over there, can you take care of that? That feels really good. I do kind of like doing those sort of squad based things, and also in Splatoon 3 they added the ability to huck the eggs. You could not do that in Splatoon 2. If you picked up an egg, you couldn't put it down, and you had to go all the way back to the net yourself.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the throwing the eggs thing is really cool because you can create sort of these
relays.
Relays where you're like throwing like something that I've actually gotten pretty good at is just getting eggs and tossing them up to wherever they need to be so that somebody else can put them in. You don't get any points for it. Like, you don't get assists or something, which would be kind of cool if you did, but I don't know how they keep track of it.
Well, I mean, with the eggs, I don't actually know, because I know when it shows how many gold eggs you snagged, there's also like a number in parentheses, so I'm wondering if it's like, those are the eggs that you held previously but then passed to another player.
Yeah,
I need to look up what that number actually means.
Yeah, that'd be interesting if it was, because it definitely feels like sometimes you're like, well, no one's gonna realize how helpful I was as a team, but dang, did I help?
Well, one of the things I've learned about Salmon Run, the thing is, the players I've seen are when they actually are on it, they are very attentive to your needs. Like, if you get splatted, they're like, oh, I need to help that guy. Like, they can't always make it over to you because sometimes you run off and do something stupid, but like they're not like just running past you when you're calling for help. They see you in your little life ring flotation device, and they're like, oh yeah, that's a priority.
Yeah, and that's where the whole like different loadouts can essentially become healers sort of thing comes into play, where like if you have something that's specifically good at like clearing a small area and hitting like a wide area, it can be really good to be like, okay, yeah, I'm just going to hit this whole area right here where my friend is dead. They come back to life, and now they have a little bit of room to breathe in for a second. It's pretty cool. I really like it a lot.
And I haven't put a lot of time into this. They did introduce table turf battles, which is a super cool idea and entirely unnecessary. And I love the fact that they just went ahead and included this. It's a card game and it's one of those things where I still, to the life of me, I can't fully comprehend the rules. And there's no multiplayer for it, so unfortunately, it's there's not like a whole lot. I think that's part of the reason why people don't talk about it a whole lot online. But it's a cool idea. I want to see a multiplayer for it, even if I don't personally play it. I want to see like what the meta is, because right now my current strategy is just try to rush down and then gate off the opponent's area.
Yeah, I haven't gotten to mess with it at all yet, but I have enjoyed collecting the little cards through the campaign and picking them up at the store and stuff like that. Like it's even that part's just fun. So I'm excited to see what it's like. Yeah, and if they ever have like a multiplayer version of it, I'll really look forward to playing it.
Cards, but not to play the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I hardly ever played Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh, but I have a crap ton of cards.
Oh wow, I was just making a random analogy. I didn't realize that was a lucky guess of mine, I guess.
Yep, nope, that really is me.
But yeah, Table Turf. Oh, I also like the art for it because it has a completely different art style from the rest of the game, and those little 2D illustrations are cool.
Yeah, they're beautiful. I really love it.
And then I think probably the biggest improvement to Splatoon 3 is what happens between matches. And so, there's the hub, there's the plaza, and I actually don't really like the plaza too much in this game. Because it's really big and kind of like windy and twisty. Yeah, it's weird. A lot. It feels much more like a real place than the previous games. Which, on one hand, I appreciate that. I always appreciate verisimilitude. But on the other hand, like I've had slowdown there a lot, and it seems kind of unnecessarily difficult to traverse. This is the first Splatoon game where I've navigated almost exclusively with the navigation menu.
Yeah, no, there's definitely frame rate drops in the hub, and like I think it's a neat idea, but I don't know if execution ended up being good. Because it's like I honestly don't know where things are most of the time, and just end up having to use the map and quick travel stuff because I wouldn't know where to find most of it anyway. Because it's very like. Everything's kind of like holed away on the wall somewhere randomly around a corner and stuff, which is very realistic in a lot of ways, but is not necessarily the greatest game design, especially because, like I say, the frame rate drops all the time and it just acts funny. And so, yeah.
I mean, it's pretty to look at, and I do like trying to figure out where little buddy scrambled off to this time, but and it looks great during Splatfest, but it's not it's not my favorite. And then the lobby, you can now run around and practice in the lobby, and there's a little training area that you can run around in between matches, and that is one of the best improvements to the game I can think of.
It's very cool. It's a lot of fun. I like being able to practice with a couple of different weapons and stuff during it. My only real frustration with that is just that, and you still haven't gotten to experience this as far as I know, but whenever you're the person who's being invited by the other person, it does not, as far as I can tell, like do a good job of letting you know somebody's invited you. You just like have to be paying attention to a random corner of the room where a ghost of your friend just appears suddenly, and you have to go talk to them. But if you're not like looking at that corner, there isn't like something that's like, oh, you've been invited to play or anything, and I think they can even the ghost can show up in a couple of different spots. Maybe it's just the different game modes. Maybe just the different game modes have different spots they can be, but I felt like I never even knew where to look. And sometimes I would go talk to them and it would be like, oh, you've been invited, and I click it and it'd be like, oh, that room's not open anymore, and I'd be like, but you just invited me and you're here. I'm so what's happening?
That's a real bummer. Yeah, I know we've had some trouble trying to figure out how to actually connect to different rooms, but it definitely beats Splatoon 1 and 2, which just had you looking at a list of players, and the only thing you could do was like press buttons on the controller to make the background music fluctuate.
Oh, yeah, that does not sound cool at all.
Very
so this is superior.
And also, we have lockers now, and that instead of giving players their own room to decorate, you can now just decorate a locker, which I think is actually a little bit more apropos for the subject matter.
Yeah, it's a cool thing. I'm excited to get to do a bunch of decorating now that I have a lot more stuff.
Are you planning on going with a particular theme?
I don't know. I'll just have to look at what I have and what it looks like whenever you're putting things in there. It'll probably be just a mess,
mine is just kind of like just for the most part. There's like my mini splatling and some of the clothes I like to put on my character, but the rest of it is a bunch of stuff from Alterna, because you get each sunken scroll gives you a sticker. And so I have a bunch of like newspaper clippings pasted to the inside my locker door, and then I have like newspapers and magazines and stuff down there, and I'm trying to go for
fun.
kind of a conspiracy theorist vibe.
All the pins.
Yeah,
in the
I really
wall.
wish that they give me the option to like put little pieces of string up there. Maybe in one of the future updates.
Yep, I'm sure they'll get there eventually. Especially what with the fact that there does seem like there could be conspiracy theories about how the world ended in this game.
Before we wrap it up, let's talk a little bit about the in-game events. So, what are your thoughts on Splatfests?
I think they're a lot of fun. I've enjoyed them so far. I think the idea of picking an option between 3 different options and that being your team is a cool idea. I think that they'll have to do a better job in the future of picking things that it's not clear that everyone's going to pick the same thing, maybe. Or maybe that's fine. I don't know. But
You know, it's interesting because the 3 options is new to Splatoon 3. It used to only be 2.
so before it would just be like chocolate or vanilla.
Yeah,
it's
you know,
like 3 different types of
ketchup
chocolate.
or mustard, or dogs versus cats, or whatever.
Yeah.
And the game always ends, like the last Splatfest is always which of your idols is your favorite.
Ah.
And those tend to
that'll
be
be
very
interesting.
one-sided. So I think this time it's probably going to be Shiver. That seems to be the vibe I get online. Though, I don't know, Big Man, he's got kind of a dark horse thing going.
Yeah, no, I could see that. I like Shiver a whole lot, but yeah, Big Man was just enjoyable.
Yeah, the Splatfests, they're always a lot of fun. It has that nice festival environment. Now you can get like these little, leading up to it, you can get these little conch shells that you can use on the shell out machine. So it feels like there are a lot more rewards here. There's also like the tricolor battles where you have 3 teams. Like you place one team in the center, and it's typically the one who's like in the lead at the halfway point, and then you have 2 members.
Right.
So it's still only 8 players, but you have 2 members from other teams trying to encroach on the center of the map.
That's pretty cool.
It's really, really hectic. It's one of those things where I always, no matter what team I feel like, I always feel like I'm on the, like I'm just barely holding on.
Right. And I guess that's good game design if that's the case, because that's kind of what you want. You know, you want to feel like you're winning, but it's close.
So it's really, those get really hectic. And the other one, and I'm so glad that they included an event for this, is Big Run, which is Salmon Run themed. And there's only been one so far, but man, I hope they do more. And first of all, I love what it does to the plaza, because everything just turns apocalyptic. The skies are red, and like the mood is really, really grim.
Yeah, did I get to play with you on the Big Run one?
Yeah,
I
you
can't
did.
remember.
You did.
I think I
It was
did.
on Wahoo World.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, I thought that one was really cool. I really appreciated getting to do Salmon Run for the Splatfest, and I thought that was fun. That was cool. So yeah, and it had like a weird spooky aesthetic to it.
Yeah, and you got to play
cool.
Salmon Run on what was normally a multiplayer map. And it's funny, the memes for that one, because it originally was that map is not particularly popular for multiplayer. So people were saying, oh, it's like, we have to defend Inkopolis. Oh, they're taking Wahoo World. They can keep Wahoo World. And then after that, the Big Run, people actually said that Wahoo World made for a really good Salmon Run map, and that they should just add it to Salmon Run. So that like changed the meaning of the expression "they can keep it." Because it's like, no, please actually keep it. We had more fun with this on Salmon Run.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love it.
I really hope that they do another Big Run soon. So, final thoughts, Nathaniel?
I think that ultimately it's a really, really good game. I definitely give it a 4 out of 5. Easy. I really appreciate it. It's definitely one of those games where once you get going on it, it's a lot of fun, and it's kind of got a barrier to entry as far as like skill and like learning how things work if you haven't been playing since the first one, because there's a lot of weird mechanics that don't carry over from other shooters. But if you get in there, you play the campaign, you get get your feet wet with it and play with some friends
or
and
sticky,
stuff,
as
it
the case
really
may be.
is. Yeah, absolutely. It really is enjoyable and is definitely worth your time. So especially if you're looking for a good shooter to play with friends, and like the most recent Halo isn't doing it for you, and you're not willing to bear the memes of Fortnite, then this is a fantastic game to get into. I really enjoy it.
And
It's
this
great.
is I agree. This is just like I said, not having to stare at a screen while you're matchmaking honestly makes this the best one in the series for me. Yeah, so this is probably going to be my new game that I play when I'm just between other games and I just don't know what I feel like playing at the moment. Like, this is going to be my sort of go-to pick up and play time filler.
Yeah, I could definitely see that for me as well. I can't be 100% sure because my brain is pretty. It definitely just does what it wants to do. But so far, I've had a lot of fun with it. I can see coming back to it periodically.
When I beat a game, there's actually like a period of a week and a half where I don't play any video games because I have a long list of games in my backlog, and it's like, which one of these? And so having something that I can kind of use to assuage the decision paralysis, it would be it is nice. Or where it's just like, okay, I'm too tired to play this game, so I'm just going to play something else instead. So, Nathaniel, where can we find you?
You can find me on my YouTube channel, which is Nathan Blake Games. I do have a Twitch and a Twitter that are mostly defunct at this point. Haven't done anything with them in a long time. That are both Nathan Blake Games as well. So you can find me at those places. But
did Elon Musk give you the extra character?
No, yeah, I mean, it still has at Nathan Blake Game without the S. No, yeah, Elon Musk did not give me the extra character, unfortunately. But, maybe I can pay him $5 a month or something and get that. So, I think, yeah. But, I'm not super active anywhere at the moment. Ever since I started my most recent job, which is as a worship minister, I've just been really focusing on that, which has been really, really enjoyable, very fulfilling. I'll probably get back to those other things at some point as well. So, you can go ahead and follow me those places, and you'll probably hear from me from time to time.
Yeah.
So,
and as always, you can follow us on social media at 2 Crew and on YouTube to see podcasts and game reviews and maybe the occasional live stream. And if you are looking for something to do with some friends other than Splatoon, then why don't you check out my adventure module for the 1D4chan Legend of Zelda RPG, Expedition into the Halno Woods. It's completely free. It's 48 pages of content, and I've gotten a lot of really positive feedback on it, so check it out. It's over at 2buttoncrew.com, and just search Expedition into the Halno Woods, that's HALNO, to look it up and download it and the supplements and all that. And if you have any recommendations for episodes that you would, games or just topics in general relating to Nintendo that you would like to see covered here on the podcast, you can leave a comment to this below on YouTube if you're listening to it on YouTube, or if not, you can email me at Glen, that's Glen, at 2buttoncrew.com. That's TWOBUTTONCREW.com. I'm not great at spelling, so that's always stressful.
Well, thanks for having me on, Glenn. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And thank you all for listening. Bye.
Sayonara.